My name is Jillian McDonough, and I'm a research associate in Dr. Trevino's laboratory at City of Hope. Reminder, please use one admin questions to ask questions throughout the session. Thank you, Dr. Bahadrani, for that wonderful meditation session. I have the pleasure of introducing our first speaker of the session, Janet Nudelman, Director of Program and Policy at Breast Cancer Prevention Partners. Janet Nudelman draws on over 30 years of experience working in the social change arena as a political organizer and lobbyist on women's health issues. Under her leadership, Breast Cancer Prevention Partners' advocacy efforts are playing an important role in making breast cancer prevention a priority in state houses and the halls of Congress that have resulted in the passage of 11 local, state, and federal laws. Janet also directs BCPP's 15-year-old campaign for safe cosmetics, which has raised consumer awareness of and demand for safe cosmetics, and sparked the growth of a $15 billion safe cosmetics industry. For today's discussion, she will talk about changing the face of the toxic beauty industry. Janet Nudelman, welcome.
Thank you, Jillian. Thank you so much. And I want to thank the City of Hope for inviting me here today to speak at this very important conference. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see if I can make this work. All right, can everyone see my PowerPoint? Let's see, you're probably all muted. So Jillian, can you let me know if you can see my PowerPoint? Okay, well.
Yes, I can.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that confirmation. Excellent. So as Jillian mentioned, I'm going to be speaking about changing the face of the toxic beauty industry. This is a really important topic, as is all of the issues being addressed today. I couldn't be more pleased to be speaking with you during Breast Cancer Prevention Month. I'm going to be speaking specifically about Black women and breast cancer, Black women's health, the relationship between Black women's health and the toxic chemicals in toxic products marketed to them, and how you can get engaged in changing the face of the toxic beauty industry. So just a couple of quick statistics about Black women and breast cancer. Although Black women get breast cancer less than other racial and ethnic groups, they die from it more. And that's because they get the most occurrences of the most aggressive form of breast cancer, and that's triple negative breast cancer. We believe that institutionalized racism is contributing to the racial and the social inequities that create the very obstacles that Black women face when trying to access different ways in which they could prevent breast cancer and thus increase their breast cancer risk. And as Senator Leyva said this morning, I was really struck when she said racism is a public health crisis, and we could not agree with that more. So only 10% of breast cancers can be attributed to a genetic history for the disease, and that comes as a surprise to a lot of people. So the big question is, what's going on? Where are these other breast cancers coming from? Most people think that the FDA regulates the safety of personal care products the same way that they do food and drugs, but that could not be further from the truth. A cosmetic manufacturer can use almost any raw material as a cosmetic ingredient. And that's a real problem because there's over 10,000 chemicals used to formulate the beauty and personal care products we use every day. And the majority of these chemicals are industrial chemicals, the same chemicals used to grease gears and stabilize plastics. They're really toxic and they're really harsh. I want to go back to this slide for just a second. The FDA does not conduct pre-market safety testing or review of the ingredients in cosmetics, nor can they issue mandatory recalls for cosmetic products, even if they're harming human health. This was really problematic when most of you remember a product called Brazilian Blowout, which is a hair straightening product. The product was tested for the presence of formaldehyde, which is a known human carcinogen, and it was discovered that Brazilian Blowout contained 10% formaldehyde by weight, and that's more formaldehyde than an undertaker uses to embalm a dead person. But the FDA couldn't do anything to get these toxic products off of store shelves, and they continue to be available today at exactly the same content and level of formaldehyde. So let's think about what this means in terms of human health. In the United States, the FDA has only ever banned 11 chemicals from cosmetics. In comparison to the European Union, where over 1,300 chemicals have been banned from the beauty and personal care products sold there. So what that means is companies can and do use chemicals linked to cancer, birth defects, reproductive harm, neurotoxicity, endocrine disruption, respiratory harm, and the list goes on and on. And these are just a few examples of chemicals, again, banned by the EU, but used legally here in products sold in the US. For example, lead in hair dye, coal tar in both hair dye and dandruff shampoo, phenylene diamines and formaldehyde used in both hair straightening products, as well as hair dye, and phthalates, which can be found in a number of different products, including feminine hair or feminine hygiene spray, as well as fragrance chemicals. So this is a list of 10 toxic products. In 2018, Breast Cancer Prevention Partners tested 40 different cleaning products and beauty products for toxic chemicals that both appeared on the label, as well as toxic chemicals that were hiding under the word fragrance on product labels. And some of you might know, most people don't, that although companies are required to disclose all of the ingredients in a product on the cosmetic products label, there are 3 exceptions to that rule, and those are fragrance, flavor, and colorants. The problem is that one word fragrance can hide anywhere between a dozen to hundreds of individual chemicals, some of which are linked to adverse health effects, including cancer and hormone disruption. So we tested 40 beauty and personal care products and cleaning products, as I said, for the chemicals that both appeared on product labels and didn't. And these are the 10 most toxic products that came out of that list. This is a mixture of both, as you can see, fine fragrances endorsed by Taylor Swift and Jennifer Lopez, as well as what was some of the other Axe body spray, and a well-known tub and tile cleaner made by Kaboom. But what was the most shocking finding of our study is that the most toxic product, more toxic than the cleaning products that we tested, was a kid shampoo marketed to kids of color called Just For Me, made by Strength of Nature. So this kid shampoo was more toxic than the tub and tile cleaner, than the carpet spot remover. It contained 24 chemicals of concern, 17 of which did not appear on the product label. So that meant those 17 chemicals were fragrance ingredients. The other really, really important finding of this study is that the majority of the toxic chemicals that we found through our laboratory testing were fragrance ingredients. So again, a real problem for consumers and salon workers because these chemicals don't appear on product labels. So this is a real buyer beware situation for consumers, but it's especially problematic for women and girls of color because the beauty products marketed to women and girls of color it contains some of the most toxic chemicals used by the beauty industry. So here's a list of some of the products that Black women use. Other women use them as well, but Black women use them more, and some of the adverse health effects related to that product use. What we're finding is chemicals like, again, formaldehyde, which I mentioned, which is in hair straighteners, a known human carcinogen, phenylenediamines in hair dyes, lead and other heavy metals in color cosmetics, phthalates in perfumes, phthalates in feminine care spray, benzophenone and other UV filters linked to hormone disruption in sunscreen, hydroquinone and mercury found in skin lighteners. These are really, really toxic chemicals that have no business being in the beauty and personal care products we use every day. And it is especially egregious that some of these most toxic chemicals are in the beauty products that are marketed to Black women. So what's up with this, right? Most of us thought the government is protecting us from toxic chemicals in cosmetics. But the reality is that beauty and personal care products are among the least regulated consumer products on the market today. There is only 2.5 pages of federal law that exists to regulate a $100 billion cosmetics industry and a $70 billion fragrance industry. And that law has only been amended once since it was enacted 82 years ago in 1938. So you can imagine the disconnect between the law that exists and the problem that law needs to be addressing. So we at Breast Cancer Prevention Partners and our Campaign for Safe Cosmetics, which has been around since 2004, have been advocating for stricter, more health protective, more meaningful federal and state cosmetic safety laws for over a decade now. And what we think that means are laws that require full ingredient disclosure, including fragrance, flavor, and colorants, disclosure to both consumers, to the FDA, and to the manufacturers, because the reality is there's a supply chain problem that prevents all of that from happening right now. We also think there needs to be meaningful federal legislation that bans the worst chemicals first. So chemicals linked to cancer and birth defects, we think, have no business being in beauty and personal care products. We think that federal and state laws should protect Black women and other women of color from the toxic chemicals in the toxic products that are marketed to them, as well as other vulnerable populations like pregnant women and kids and workers, salon workers, and workers in manufacturing plants as well. And we think that there shouldn't be any federal preemption. Lots and lots of businesses are very interested in passing a federal law that would preempt the states, basically prevent the states, which is what preemption means, from doing more and legislating to protect the health and safety of its citizens. So currently, there are 3 bills on the federal horizon that were introduced to reform the way that cosmetic safety currently exists here in the United States. We consider the gold standard to be a bill that was introduced by Representative Schakowsky. She's a congresswoman from Chicago, and her bill is called the Safe Cosmetics and Personal Care Products Act. This is a bill we've been working on since 2009. The other 2 bills are more complicated. These are bills introduced by our own Senator Feinstein from California, the Personal Care Products Safety Act, and its House companion introduced by New Jersey Congressman Representative Pallone. These 2 bills are supported by all of the big major multinational cosmetic players, Unilever, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, Coty, Chanel, as well as their trade association. And you got to wonder, why would the industry that these laws set out to more strictly regulate be supporting these bills? And the answer is a simple one, and that is because they pretty much rubber stamp business as usual, the way that these companies are currently treating cosmetic safety. And we have a real problem with that, because we think that cosmetic safety reform should benefit consumers and salon workers, not the very industry that is not doing its job to protect consumer and worker safety. And I'm going to tell you in a minute about how you can get involved to change that. So given the partisan gridlock that we've seen in Congress, and the lack of meaningful cosmetic safety reform, we took our case to the California legislature, and we were very successful over this past year. Now, when California passes a law, it doesn't just benefit Californians. As the 5th largest economy in the world, everyone everywhere benefits when we pass a law here. And there were 3 important bills that got signed into law by Governor Newsom on September 30th. The first law, Senator Leyva spoke about this morning. She was our fearless leader on a bill called the Cosmetic, Fragrance, and Flavor Ingredient Right to Know Act. That bill, SB Senate Bill 312, requires companies that sell beauty and personal care products in California to disclose the toxic chemicals in those products. So chemicals that negatively impact the health of both people, salon workers, as well as our environment. This bill is really important because it's the first law of its kind anywhere in the world. And when the toxic fragrance and flavor chemicals are disclosed in beauty and personal care products sold here, they will no longer be eligible for trade secret protection. So again, everyone everywhere around the world will benefit as a result of passage of that law. And I can't thank Senator Leyva enough. She truly is one of the most fierce and determined lawmakers that we have in Sacramento today when it comes to protecting health, and particularly protecting the health of Black women and other women of color. So thank you, Senator Leyva. Oh, and I also have to thank our other bill sponsors, Black Women for Wellness and Women's Voices for the Earth, and the California Healthy Nail Salon Collaborative, because our 4 organizations work together to secure passage of this bill. The other law that was enacted is a law called the Toxic Free Cosmetic Act. And this is a law that bans 24 chemicals from cosmetics sold in California. A number of the chemicals that I mentioned earlier in my presentation. So chemicals like formaldehyde are banned, 2 phenylenediamines that are used in hair dye. And I want to mention, when Black women dye their hair regularly, they face a 60% increased risk of breast cancer, as opposed to white women who dye their hair regularly. So the ban on formaldehyde and phenylenediamines from hair dye in California is really going to help Black women's health and help prevent breast cancer here as well. Other chemicals that were banned are 2 long chain parabens. Parabens are used to preserve cosmetic products, and they've been found whole and unmetabolized in breast tumors. So there's a direct link to parabens and hormone disruption, not directly to breast cancer, but to endocrine disruption, which is a risk factor for breast cancer, to phthalates, and 13 perfluorinated chemicals. And this is really interesting because these perfluorinated chemicals, these PFAS chemicals, are chemicals used in waterproof cosmetics like mascara and lipstick, but they're also chemicals that are used in firefighting foam. What's interesting about that is the third law that we got signed by Governor Newsom was SB 1044, and that's a law that bans perfluorinated chemicals from firefighter foam that's either sold or used in California. So it's just interesting to connect the dots between where these toxic chemicals show up. It's crazy to think that the same chemicals that we might be using in our lipstick and our anti-aging cream or body lotion are also used in firefighting foam, as a water repellent in tents and raincoats and other textiles, and also in grease-proof food packaging wrapping that's used by fast food restaurants. So 3 really important laws that we can take credit for here in California that people like you made possible, because we were lobbying in Sacramento with community members like you, with salon workers, with clean cosmetic companies, and of course with our nonprofit partners. So again, so much of what this represents is a shared victory. And I want to thank many of you who are participating in today's conference for helping us get over the finish line. So the other way we do our work at Breast Cancer Prevention Partners and through our campaign for safe cosmetics is through what we call market-based campaigns. So we advocate for stricter laws to protect everyone from toxic chemicals in consumer products, in occupational settings, in place-based exposures in our communities. But we also run these big, massive campaigns to try to get the industry laggards to do better, not because the law is telling them that they need to do so, but because it's the right thing to do. And over the years, we've been successful in driving phthalates out of the market, triclosan out of the market. We got the toxic trio out of OPI nail polish. But our most recent campaign that I want to tell you about and invite you to join us in is a campaign against Johnson & Johnson. So Johnson & Johnson makes a baby powder that's one of its most iconic products. And in May, they announced that they were going to stop selling this baby powder in the US and in Canada, but they're continuing global sales of this product. And the problem is that Johnson & Johnson's own testing has discovered asbestos contamination in its baby powder. Asbestos is linked to mesothelioma when it's inhaled, when talc is inhaled, but it's also linked to ovarian cancer when it's used in the genital area. And Black women and other women of color use talcum powder as a feminine deodorant and have for many, many years. So this is a real problem because when Johnson & Johnson's profits started to dip from sales of this toxic talc, because of the public's increased understanding of the talc asbestos cancer connection, what did they do? They didn't warn consumers. They didn't pull the products off the shelves. But what they did instead was start to aggressively market their talc-based baby powder to Black women and Latina women and overweight women. And we know this because a Reuters investigation of Johnson & Johnson's private documents discovered this to be the case. So this is egregious on so many levels. We launched a global campaign against Johnson & Johnson in June, and we have already generated support from 200 nonprofit organizations from 51 countries across the world. We have written Johnson & Johnson twice via sign-on letters that were endorsed by these 200 groups, and they've dismissed our concerns. So this is not okay. We want to invite you to join us in telling Johnson & Johnson it's not okay and in demanding that they immediately stop all global sales of these products. So I want to end quickly because I think we've only got about 8 or 9 more minutes for Q&A, and just tell you how you can get involved. We want you to write your congressional delegation, tell them you want cosmetic safety reform now, and become an advocate for safe cosmetics. Personally, what you can do is become a smarter shopper, use fewer products, skip fragrance where you can, support companies that voluntarily disclose fragrance. And you can learn more. And you can do so by following us on our social channels and by visiting our Action Center at bcpp.org and becoming a member of the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics.